look, I'm not gonna, like, beat around the bush or anything. We're doing bosses right now. Alright, so first up we have Sawyer. He's the first boss of Cry of Fear. He's encountered in the nightmare vision of the apartments. I hate those apartments so much. Um, his appearance is pretty obvious. I mean, he's got a bunch of nails around him. This actually really reminded me of the movie Hellraiser, particularly, Pinhead, with less pins. Anyways, he uses a chainsaw just like Starrunner. This game seems really like its chainsaws. Um, and surprisingly, he doesn't have a lot of health. He actually has, according to this, 80 health on medium and 120 on nightmare, but something tells me that he takes reduced damage. Because 120, or I should say more so the medium difficulty health there, 80, that's not much more than a slower, which I can kill in about 5 Glock shots. This guy will take many, many, many hits. And I don't just mean when he's in his invulnerable state, but straight to the back. He will take hits over and over and over again. Note that Sawyer is an insta-kill. I've mentioned this before, but if you get hit by him, he will fuck you up. There's actually, I believe, a special effect as well, or a special animation for it, if you behead Simon. The interpretation of Sawyer, I'm assuming is kind of similar to Sawrunner, which we'll get to in a bit, which is basically just he's being chased by his inner demons. It's also possible that it's representative of the weird pedophile serial killer from the apartments. The 4 notes you get that are all really creepy talking about kids the entire time. Yeah, it could be him. Not really sure. Anyways, let's move on. Alright, moving on to the next boss, we have Mace. He's technically, once again, unkillable by normal means. Sawyer, for example, has to be stabbed repeatedly or shot until he kneels down and then you get behind him and stab the eye. Same thing basically here. He's completely invulnerable, but in this instance, you don't have to get him weakened to hit a weak spot. You run around these rooms and pull these valves that electrocute the water-filled floor, and there's a little spot you can stand on to keep yourself safe from the electricity. Mace is basically blind, completely. Mechanically speaking, this is true too. He will not path to you constantly. It actually takes him a second to find you. He actually has some animations and sounds that kind of seems like he's sniffing Simon out, trying to pursue him, but it's also assumed that he can hear, since if you move around in the water, he will follow. He's kind of weird, because my interpretation of Mace is he's an oddball. I think the weird, slow nature of Mace might be kind of in the same vein of the theory with Taller, which is that it represents depression, possibly, the slow but inevitable death, as well as the fact that it seems almost insurmountable. You can't shoot him, you can't stab him, there's nothing you can do except for this one method, which happens to be electrocuting. I hope that's not some kind of like shock therapy suggestion, but it's still kind of an amusing notion. That being said, there's not much more to Mace. Yeah, told you we'd get this asshole. This is Carcass. He is the third boss. He's technically optional. If you walk off to the right, you can actually leave the fight entirely, and he will just disappear once you get down to ground floor level. He makes this really creepy sound the entire time, and if you do actually run away, you can hear that sound all the way until you get to the bottom, back on street level. Carcass is an incredibly lethal foe. I mean, he does a lot of damage, all of his attacks, and he screwed me up so many times my first playthrough. I managed to do it without taking any damage this time because there's some vents in the back that I learned about a long time ago. If you hide behind those, they're perfect cover. And honestly, it's probably the only way to really fight him, but it kind of becomes cheesy because you can't get hit. You're invulnerable. He has a lot of health, by the way, though. 1,000 HP on normal and 2,000 on nightmare. It will take a lot of bullets for him to actually be downed. He has no gimmicks, unlike the other bosses, really. I mean, true gimmicks. The vents, I'm not sure if that was intentional. He can just be straight up damaged. His interpretation is actually kind of important. It's sort of a symbol of Simon's grief. I was going to say inner feelings, but specifically grief. And I actually decided to consult the wiki on this, and it summed it up almost better than I could, but it was kind of the same thing I was feeling. It's basically his grief towards not only Sophie, but towards his situation. As you can see, he's bound to a chair, suspended by chains. He can't really do anything. His arms he doesn't have arms, he doesn't have feet. And he's I mean, he looks dead, sure, but it kinda, to me at least, represents how Simon might feel about being so helpless. As to the connection of Sophie, it's probably that he feels he, led her to what happened in the game. Kinetically wise, that depends on the ending, so watch the other endings. I'll be uploading those eventually when I actually get around to doing them. Next up we have Dr. Bernal. He acts as one of the later bosses in the game, and he's kind of annoying to fight, in all honesty. Whether or not he's alive or dead by the end of the game technically is determined by your endings. And also, as a side note, if you watch me play Doctor Mode, you already know this, but he is a playable character. It's not actually connected to the story, by the way, Doctor Mode, but it's kind of neat. You get to see his without the mask for like 3 seconds. Bernal kind of acts like this weird antagonist through a lot of the game, but he's sort of not an antagonist in the story. It's kind of a little bit of A and a little bit of B, and this leads up to you getting the decision whether or not you trust him. It's pretty symbolic in that regard. I think Dr. Bernal doesn't even have to be symbolic because he is like a direct interpretation of his doctor. There's, of course, a few flashbacks where he's talking about Simon, he's talking to the police about Simon, and Bernal acts as that sort of catalyst to let you decide whether or not you trust him or decide the path that Simon might have taken. And this is... the whole trust issue is pretty important, because for a lot of people, this is really hard. This isn't something most people really do. If you were mentally ill, you probably don't trust your psychiatrist. I've never trusted my psychiatrist either. And he's also the one that starts the book, which, depending on your ending, goes either very terribly or very well. Because he asks Simon to start writing the book. It's actually the theme of Doctor Mode, is that Bernal feels bad that he's done it, or that he's told him to write the book, and now he gets to go and to destroy the book. It's kind of amusing, but it's a little silly side story. I don't really actually honestly know his stats. It's kind of a bit frustrating, but he is a pain in the ass. You fight him in the attic of the asylum with this little crate battle where you hide behind crates and shoot at him with your gun. And if you cross the middle line, he just shoots you and you're dead. It's an incredibly annoying fight. They try to portray him as a bad guy through a lot of the game, I think, trying to make him look sadistic and weird and crazy, and honestly that was my interpretation to begin with, too. I actually kind of figured it was related to Simon's mental state, but I wasn't 100% sure whether or not he was a good doctor or a bad one, and it seems like he's kind of a little bit of both. He is one that has tried his best, but Simon is still very sick. This is Sick Simon. considered the canon final boss, or the true final boss, because Ending 4 is supposedly canon. I'm not really sure if that's ever been confirmed by the team, by the way. But it's where you fight him in Ending 4. Book Simon, I don't actually know much of his stats. I do know he hurts a lot. You can die in that fight. I have yet to do it, but I know you can. You fight him actually as real Simon, in a wheelchair and everything. I'm sure you watched my playthrough and know this. And he basically represents all of Simon's mental problems. Depression, anxiety, despair, hatred. It's kind of hinted that you are playing Book Simon if you're going down the bad endings. There's not really much to say about him except for he's an asshole. And a pretty creepy fight. So, I realize I called him 6 Simon last time. The previous one is actually Book Simon. 6 Simon is this one. God, real Simon, whatever. You face him if you basically get the bad ending. You fight him with... I want to say he uses just a pistol. He doesn't exactly have high damage, and the entire fight with him is more of a weird gauntlet around a platforming section until you fight him. He's obviously a representation of the real Simon. I'm assuming from the perspective of the bad ending, it's basically you're killing 6 Simon. You are committing suicide, effectively, which always makes me kind of like hesitate when I go to the ending, because I'm like, God, that seems so shitty, but it's what the ending is. You have to do it once you pick that choice. You only fight this if you didn't kill Carcass and you didn't trust the Doctor, aka the worst ending. I feel bad every time I fight him, though. I held Sawyer off until the last because he holds a special place in my heart. As a chainsaw-wielding psychopath. My bad. His head is covered with 3 theater masks. And I believe there is a real face model under there. It's pretty disfigured. He's encountered many, many times in Cry of Fear. He's effectively Pyramid Head for this game. But there is a lot of differences with them, too. For example, Pyramid Head is slow and has a long reach, and can, generally speaking, one-shot you. Sawyer can still one-shot you, however, he is incredibly fast. Much faster than you, and he has a ridiculous amount of health. You never kill him, and even if you do, he comes back again. He has 2,000 HP, which makes him ridiculously hard to kill. But kiting him is a pain in the ass, and the only way I've ever managed to actually kill him was with the camera, which is basically a cheat weapon. There is a side note that outrunning him is pretty easy due to one particular thing. When he attacks, he has to stop to swing, so if you continue moving and you don't get caught on anything, you're fine. But let me tell you, it's hard to not get caught on little door frames and things when you hear the sound of a chainsaw behind you. Also, additionally, sometimes his sound just doesn't play, which can be incredibly frustrating if you just run into him and you don't hear any chainsaw noise at all. Because he's usually behind you. You encounter him many, many times through the game, and you do actually encounter him in the co-op campaign, I believe, as well. The mod version actually had worse AI, I've already mentioned this, but Sawyer was a lot easier to actually get away from. He would stop sometime. The improved AI of the new version that I've been playing, he won't stop at all. He's not going to get stuck. It's pretty impossible. I think it has happened once to me, but I don't know how the hell that happened. But yeah, let's look at the list of encounters he actually shows up in. First off, you meet him in the alleys of Roland Street, where he cuts down the doorway, and there's actually an M16 behind him, but it's kind of a pain in the ass to get on the fly. I believe you can come back for it, but uh, I've never really done that. I've always done it the hard way, apparently. You'll encounter him again when you're traveling back through the alleys towards the college, which is a pain in the ass. He will absolutely ambush you and will, you think you're safe because you walk through the door and you're like, oh wow, that's fine, that was 10 feet, there is no big deal, and then he breaks it down and will just continue to chase you. It is absolutely terrifying, trust me. I did not expect it. The third encounter is during the nightmare sequence in the roped off apartment room. You probably won't really have to fight him, in all honesty, if you just run. Fourth encounter is in the forest segment where you find the doorknob. Now, I didn't have to fight him there, but it's pretty terrifying if you do. The first time I did this, I didn't realize that you could skim around the edge there and avoid him. And if you try to run, he will absolutely show up. He will chase you around the forest in the dark, and let me tell you, it's really hard. I've only ever managed to once run past him and actually throw the doorknob into the, well, door, and it was hard as hell. I was on my speed run too. I had no time to screw around. The last time you encounter him is in Kirkville, the sewer before you arrive at Simon's house, which is a pain in the ass. You're in this dark-ass hallway. You grab the key, and he immediately cuts through the door and chases the player back down the tunnel. Now, as you probably saw in my first playthrough, this is a pain in the ass because sometimes Simon decides he doesn't want to get in the hole. Sawyer is also encountered 3 times in Doctor mode, which you probably saw, but that was only a 15-minute playthrough. That's only a 15-minute mode, you encounter him 3 times. It is a pain in the ass. Now let's talk about Sawrunner as an entity, or as a interpretation of Simon's brain. The masks, I'm pretty sure, are kind of in the same vein that theater masks always are, which is like the different sides of people and different emotions. One of them being... Actually, side note, before I get to this point, I've actually heard supposedly that a lot of Japanese people believe that everybody has 3 faces, or 3 versions of yourself that you show to people. Like, one you show to people, one you show to those who you love, and the one who you show to yourself, the true you. And I thought that was interesting, because this kind of, I feel, reflects this a little bit. To me, that's kind of how it works here. He's showing off the happy face on one side, and the other ones are anxiety and terror, which I can really relate to. I'm one of those people that I can be completely anxious on the inside and seem pretty okay on the outside, most of the time. It's also assuming an embodiment of his insanity and his anxiety, and probably guilt. I mean, straight up out of Pyramid Head from Silent Hill 2. It is an embodiment of his guilt about how he feels about Sophie and Bernal. You'll see exactly what I mean by that with the other endings. But note, it's not very different from Silent Hill 2. And that is pretty much all of the bosses for Cry of Fear. Sorry if these explanations seem a little weird, maybe a bit messy, but I really have looked through these over and over and over and combed them, and found that there wasn't always necessarily a lot to talk about, or a good way of saying it without writing up an incredibly long script. I hope you enjoyed it regardless, and these videos pretty much serve as just a primer for the enemies. I was pretty thorough, I felt. However, you could probably learn more if you actually read the wiki on your own. It's not really necessary that you do so. I hope you really enjoy the playthroughs, and I'll be uploading uh, some little snippets from my later playthroughs. I'm not going to be uploading the whole run-throughs, but I probably will upload my speed run when I eventually do that. And if I decide to go into nightmare mode, I might upload that. Because I'm sure watching me screw up over and over and over will be fun, right? Well, see you guys next time.